Hi, I am Liangjian from Huawei Knows Arc Lab. Here is the presentation of our work LayouTransformer, generating layout patterns with transformer via sequential pattern modeling. The presentation consists of 4 parts: background, methods, experimental results and conclusions. We first introduce the background of pattern generation. Diverse layout patterns of VLSI are of crucial significance for a variety of lithography design applications, including layout hotspot detection, lithography simulation, source mask optimization and training large deep learning models. We firstly introduce the fundamental concepts and evaluation metrics for pattern generation. The generated patterns are required to follow the layout design rules of actual IC layouts. As depicted in this figure, space measures the distance between 2 adjacent polygons, width measures the size of a shape in one direction, and area represents the area of a polygon. If a layout pattern is legal, these geometric measurements need to satisfy some given critical values in the layout design rules. The diversity of layout patterns is a crucial evaluation metric for pattern generation. The complexity of a layout pattern is represented as Cx, psi, where Cx and psi are the numbers of scan lines subtracted by 1 along the x-axis and y-axis, respectively. The pattern diversity is defined as the Shannon entropy of the distribution of the pattern complexities as follows. According to this definition, the larger the entropy of the pattern complexity in the pattern library, the more diverse the patterns. Synthesizing realistic layout patterns is another essential target of pattern generation. To evaluate how realistic the generated patterns are, pattern validity is defined as the ratio of realistic patterns to total patterns. Based on the above evaluation metrics for pattern generation, the fundamental framework of pattern generation can be formulated as follows. Given a set of real layout patterns and design rules, pattern generation aims to establish a legal pattern library such that the pattern diversity and the pattern validity of the layout patterns in the library are maximized. Next, we introduce our method. Researchers exploit powerful machine learning methods to model the design process of patterns through deep neural networks. They regard the pattern generation problem as image generation of layout maps. Nevertheless, image-based modeling for layout pattern generation may suffer from 2 drawbacks. First, the pixel-level modeling of pattern geometric information is insufficient to capture the shapes and layouts of patterns, leading to poor legality of the generated patterns, as shown in the upper figure. Second, the diversity of patterns generated by existing image-based generative models is limited. In this work, we tackle the pattern generation problem from a brand new perspective of sequential modeling. The key to this idea is to design a highly structured sequential representation that explicitly describes the shapes and spatial layouts of the patterns, with the design rules learnt during training. To this end, we propose a novel pattern sequential representation that converts the 2D layout patterns into 1D sequences. As shown in the lower figure, each polygon is represented as a sequence containing the coordinates of the starting point V0, upper left corner, and the edges E_1, E_2, for walking through the polygon boundary from V0 in a counterclockwise direction. The polygons are sorted in ascending order in the sequence of the layout map according to the starting point. We develop our sequential pattern generation framework, termed LayouTransformer, based on the transformer architecture. As shown in this figure, given a set of layout examples, we first extract their sequential pattern representations, where each pattern is serialized as tokens of the starting point and the directions and offsets of edges. Then the extracted sequences are encoded and fed into a sequential generative model, which is built upon the transformer architecture. Training with a dataset of serialized patterns, our autoregressive generative model can generate new layout patterns which are legal and diverse. Our proposed sequential patterns represent the layout maps in a more compact and flexible way. Each polygon is represented as a sequence containing the coordinates of the starting point, and the directions and offsets for walking through all the edges in turn from the starting point in a counterclockwise direction. Specifically, each polygon is identified with a pair SOP and EOP tokens indicating the start and the end of the pattern sequence, respectively. The starting point x0, y0 is the upper left corner of the polygon. We define 4 directional tokens to represent the directions of up, down, left and right. Each of the directional tokens is followed by an offset value indicating the length of the edge. The coordinates of the starting point and the offsets are discretized into the integers. Multiple polygons are contained within a pair of tokens SOB and EOB, denoting the head and the tail of a layout block. In the sequential representation of the layout block, the polygons are sorted in ascending order according to the y-coordinate of their upper left corners. If two polygons have the same y-coordinate of their upper left corners, the one with smaller x0 comes first. For the non-filled pattern in this figure, we add the virtual projection point P6, such that the sequential order of the non-filled pattern is P0, P1, P2, P3, P4, P5, P6, P7, P8, P9, P10, P6, P0. Such sequential pattern representation is lossless and has high coding efficiency. Our sequential modeling explicitly encodes the shapes and spatial layouts of patterns as 1D sequences, which are more friendly for generative modeling with a transformer. Our pattern sequence representation is lossless and preserves the full geometric information of each polygon and the spatial relationship among different polygons. The geometric information implicitly contains the design rules of layout patterns. Hence, learning how to generate different tokens according to training samples allows the model to implicitly learn the design rules. Let T be the sequence of a layout map. The design rules of patterns can be learned by modeling the joint distribution P, T of the sequence. We cast the estimation of the joint distribution P, T to the autoregressive sequence generation. Based on the chain rule of probability, the joint distribution P, T can be factored into as this. This decomposes the density estimation of P, T into next token prediction conditioned on previous tokens. Transformer is adopted to learn the above product of conditional distributions. More specifically, the transformer network takes in the conditional sequence of tokens and outputs a categorical distribution over the possible values of the next token. Based on the principle of maximum likelihood, we maximize the log probability of the true tokens to train the network. The network can model the relationships among different T to learn the design rules of layout patterns. For example, regarding the currently generated sequence SOP, X0, Y0, our layout generation model predicts the next token as one of the directional tokens. This is similar to language generation where each word is predicted based on the previous words. Moreover, our generation model is required to correctly predict the ending token and meanwhile enable the closure of the polygon. I.e., following the generated directions and offsets, we can finally walk back to the starting point, and thus the trajectory can form a complete polygon with horizontal and vertical edges. Likewise, a grammar-correct sentence needs a correct ending signal and integrity of both the semantic meaning and linguistic structure. After training, our model can generate new patterns in an auto-regressive manner, i.e., each token is generated based on the preceding generated ones, as shown in this figure. Given a starting prompt as input, SOB, SOP, the prompt is first tokenized and encoded via the learned word embedding layer, and then fed into the trained transformer blocks. Based on the output vectors, we can obtain the categorical distribution over the possible values of the next token using the softmax function. From the distribution, a token X0 is sampled as the generated next token, which is then regarded as an input token for predicting the subsequent token. Then, SOB, SOP and X_0 is fed back into the model for continuing generation. Repeat the generation process above until encountering the token EOB, which indicates the end of the generation of a layout map. Next, we introduce experimental results. We generate 100,000 patterns from the trained model and evaluate their diversity and legality. We compare our LayouTransformer with several learning-based baselines. The legal GAN model can legalize most of the illegal patterns. In this table, we can see that our method obtains the largest number of DRC clean patterns and the best diversity performance on the legal patterns, which demonstrates the superiority of our sequential pattern generation model. Note that we do not use legal GAN to correct illegal patterns. Generated patterns are realistic if they closely resemble the actual layout and shares the same inherent style with the layout. Next, we evaluate how realistic the patterns generated by LayouTransformer are. We adopt the pattern style detection model proposed by to verify the validity of the patterns. The key idea of the model is that realistic patterns with a particular layout style are viewed as normal. Otherwise, they are anomalous. Hence, pattern style detection is regarded as anomaly detection of generated layouts. Specifically, a CGAN-S trained to learn the distribution of normal samples. Since the encoder is trained on normal samples, it fails to learn anomalous features. The trained generator is unable to reconstruct an anomalous pattern if it is encoded. Hence, we can detect if a given pattern is realistic or not by the difference of features between the pattern and its reconstructed one. This difference is defined as the pattern anomaly score. For fair comparisons, we adopt the same pre-trained pattern style detection model to compute the anomaly scores of layout patterns generated by LayouTransformer. The legal patterns are used to evaluate the pattern validity. From this table, we can see that our LayouTransformer achieves the highest pattern validity with different thresholds, even approaching the validity of the real training patterns. We show some randomly selected examples of the training and generated patterns respectively. From these examples, we can observe that the complexity of our generated polygons are consistent with the training samples, without an undesirable significant style gap between them. The diversity of generated layout patterns plays a crucial role in various lithography design applications. We further evaluate the diversity of layout patterns generated by our method by comparing the polygon shape distribution of the generated patterns with that of the real training patterns. Specifically, the shape of a polygon is determined by its vertexes. For simplification, we count the number of vertexes of a polygon as its shape representation. This figure shows the comparison of the polygon shape distribution in the training set and the generated set. We observe that the generated set has a similar distributions of polygon complexity to the training set. This further demonstrates the ability of LayouTransformer to generate diverse layout patterns whose shape distribution follows that of the training samples. Since the generated pattern sequences are randomly sampled from the approximate distribution, some anomalous patterns are difficult to avoid. These anomalous patterns can be divided into two categories. One is that a sequence between a pair's SOP and EOP tokens cannot form a complete polygon with only horizontal and vertical edges. The upper figure shows some such patterns. The proportion of this kind of anomalous patterns generated patterns is only 0.48%. These incomplete polygons with only can be easily checked. Another category is that different polygons in a layout partially overlap spatially as shown in lower figure. These layout patterns seriously violate the DRC rules. Their proportion generated patterns is 7.9%. In this paper, we consider these anomalous patterns as illegal. In conclusion, we make the first attempt at learning the generation of layout patterns from the perspective of sequential modeling. To this end, we propose a novel and efficient sequential pattern representation to explicitly encode the shapes and layouts of patterns. This representation method is lossless, highly structured, and has high encoding efficiency. Also, we develop LayouTransformer based on transformer. LayouTransformer regards the design rules behind the training patterns as some kind of grammar rules. Extensive experiments show that our LayouTransformer significantly outperforms existing learning-based methods in terms of pattern diversity, legality, and validity.